now that you've seen a lot of what the activities have been and the content of the groups and all of that, I think we're heading towards the final reflections on, as you all know, this is a rather short year for SIANI. We have funding until end of August, I believe, and we are feeling, as you can probably tell from these presentations, a great deal of momentum, that we feel we finally got an active membership, important questions, and important participation in processes. So I think to reflect on the future, I'll leave it wide open, whatever you want to say. Did you want to go first, Ola, or do you want to go together with... You go first. Yeah. Ola Möller from Sida, which is our financing organization, has a few reflections about the future.
Okay. You want? Yeah. I can stand here?
You can stand wherever you want.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to apologize for not being part of this meeting this morning. Yesterday at Sida, we arranged a big meeting with a focus on zero hunger in a changing climate. And this morning we had some follow-up meetings with the presenters, so that's why I wasn't able to take part in the meeting this morning. But I've heard during the lunchtime that you had quite a lot of discussions and quite a lot of how shall I say, engaged opinions about different things, which is, I think, from me as being a representative of the donor, very positive and encouraging. Now, my position within Sida is that I'm the lead policy specialist, so I'm not really the one responsible for managing the support to Sioni. Unfortunately, my colleagues at that unit couldn't be with us today, except for one colleague. I'll come back to her later. So I'm more of a policy specialist within Sida, and my responsibility is to be policy specialist within the areas of rural development, food security, food safety, land rights, rural development, agriculture, forestry, aquaculture, and so on. So it's a nice little sort of area to work with. But it's quite interesting. And I'm going to share a few of my thoughts about the future for Sioni, and also more from a more general perspective. And some of you might, well, I hope you allow me to be a little bit provocative, because I think that's good to promote some discussions and questions. Just recently, we received a new letter of appropriation from the government to Sida, and that is where we get the instructions what to work with and how to work and with what partners and so on. And in that directive we received from the government, it was very clear that for the coming years, we should focus a lot more on sustainability, on environment and climate. This is very clear. I think one of the main challenges, both within Sida and possibly also in Sweden as a society, is to understand that environment and climate is not only a subject area or a thematic area. It's something that goes across all parts of society. And this is something that we all need to work with a lot. And my colleagues within Sida, who are responsible for the work with human rights and democratization and so on, they are now looking at how do we integrate this into that work. And I think that is a very important thing to remember. How do we integrate this? I think the sustainable... oh, sorry. I should have done this before. Sorry.
That is not me.
I suppose this happens to everyone every once in a while. Well, the natural resources sector is a very important area if we are to achieve these goals that are set out in the Agenda 2030 that I understand you have been working with in the morning. And I think that us that have been working in the sector of natural resources has, ever since we started working with these issues, been working with sustainability, with resilience among farmer households and so on. So I don't think this is actually something very new to us. And I think we are standing quite well prepared to continue working with this in the future. But I think with this new Agenda 2030, the challenge is much higher. during the meeting last year when it was agreed upon the Agenda 2030, these 17 targets or goals, the stakes were raised quite substantially. If we look at the old Millennium Development Goal 1, it said we should halve hunger and we should cut poverty in half. If we look at the new sustainability goals, 1 and 2, it says we should completely eradicate poverty in all its forms everywhere. And we should also completely eradicate hunger. That's quite a substantial raise in ambition, isn't it? And this is a challenge that we, working with rural development and poverty, especially, I think, has a responsibility to work with. We all also know that agriculture, now I'm talking about agriculture from a very broad perspective, including agroforestry, forestry, aquaculture, fisheries, and so on. Agriculture and food production is really a challenge when looking at these sustainability targets. We are one of the worst when it comes to emitting greenhouse gases. We are one of the worst when it comes to the negative impact on biodiversity. And even so, we need to increase food production quite substantially to reach these targets. Can we do that? How do we increase this production? How do we increase sustainable livelihoods for people without destroying the environment and people's livelihoods on the way? And there I think rural development, sustainable food production is of course the answer to that. But I think maybe to some extent, if we are self-critical, have we achieved this? Have we been able to put this across as the solution, or have we failed? I think agriculture today, rural development, is unfortunately rather low on the list of political priorities. And why has that happened? I think we need to be a bit self-critical on this. There's a lot of other political priorities higher on the list. We have human rights, we have democratization, we have education, we have health and so on. Very important areas. But what we have failed in, I think, is to show that rural development, food production and agriculture is sort of the umbrella to bring where all these comes together. Agriculture, food production and health. Unless we have proper food production, we won't eradicate hunger. And maybe even a bigger problem, we will continue having a lot of young people growing up stunted. Market, economic development, without a living rural development, people won't have income, people won't have jobs. We will continue having all these problems with poverty in rural areas. Migration, young people who see a future where they live, they will stay. We won't have these enormous migration flows that we see today. And I can go on and link all different kinds of issues, even human rights, to agriculture development. I think we must be even better showing the relevance and the link and results from our work with rural development, agriculture and food production to these other areas to again come up on top of the political priority. In all this, I think SIANI has already since its start, since its inception, had as a target to bring partners together. From the start, maybe mainly from the agriculture sector, but more and more from other parts of society. And I think this is the solution. We need to bring in other disciplines into our work, into our discussions, to work more together with others. We had the discussion here, just one of the previous presenters, when it comes to post-harvest losses. In the 1990s, I worked in Southern Africa looking at post-harvest production losses. And one very important thing was the social aspect. The farmers knew that these structures where we are storing our maize is not very good. It's easy for the rats to get in there, and there's a lot of humidity, and we have to throw away a lot of the maize because of pests and other things. But we can't do it any other way, because socially it's not acceptable. I don't want to show how much I have in my houses, like we did in Sweden 100 years ago. So we need to bring in a lot of other disciplines in order for us to work. And I think SIANI and you have showed that this is possible to do, to continue that work. And I came back from a posting abroad 2 years ago. I was part of the starting up of SIANI, and I didn't have any contact with SIANI under a number of years, and came back and started working with you in SIANI about a year ago. And I must say it's very impressive. So I think when working like you are doing here, continuing working, developing it further, I think we have a rather good chance from a Swedish perspective to contribute to solving, especially the Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 2. Sustainable livelihood, sustainable food production and rural development. Right, when it comes to the nitty-gritty on the Sida and SIANI corporations, I will leave that for tomorrow, because then I think my colleagues who are working with this will be joining you in the meeting. But before handing over the mic, I would like to introduce my colleague Karin Oskarsson. You want to say a few words, or? Yeah. Yeah. Karin will be the new officer in charge within Sida for managing the contribution and the cooperation with SIANI. So with those words, thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.